Hello and welcome to essentially the final Analysing Avatar for the time being. We're here this week to discuss the last episode of Korra, which is just called The Last Stand. How you feeling, Chris? Big moment, I guess. Like 100 odd episodes in, we've tackled both.
Yeah, we'll be better. I'm way more confident. Like, you know, Steven University, we'd have to engineer things. Whereas, you know, analysing Avatar, we can do the live action maybe when the new series of the live action starts. They got new episodes of the animated. We'll be back, baby. It's you know,
yes.
I'm not feeling too emotional about that because we'll definitely be back.
Yeah, I definitely with more certainty than with Steven Universe, like, because like we were like, it really needs us to be able to invent a reason to keep doing this. Whereas,
because for those wondering, like if you're thinking, oh, what about this for Steven University? Did it? If you're thinking, no, what about the pilots? Did it? What about the web shorts? Did them? What about the comics? Yep.
Yeah, and
read
then
the
comics.
Yeah,
and it was one of those things where we were like, oh, it's okay, we'll do revisiting old episodes, and we started doing that, and then we just weren't getting. I don't think we were getting much out of that, and it just sort of fell away. So we did a few revisits, and then we just sort of like, yeah. The only one I ever regret that we didn't get back to was I feel like I wanted to get back to the movie, but we never did that. But maybe at some point we'll do the movie. But anyway, I know Chris is laughing because he knows that movie haunts me. That podcast for the movie haunts me. Lives in my dreams.
You really worry about it. You really worry about like your negativity.
Yeah, it was strong. The negativity was strong with this one. I came down on the movie quite hard, and I don't know whether that was justified or not.
Is it because there's a running thing, like a peek behind the curtain? We came fairly close to getting interviews with, like, we were in conversations with some big players, and then the conversations just stopped. And your theory is that they picked a random episode to listen to and listen to that one.
Yeah, I mean,
when I ain't talking to these guys.
When we were asking, and when we were in those conversations, and I was, pointing out the podcast, there was a part of me that was like, don't listen to the movie one though, because then it's not going to seem like a fun time. But no, I don't know. I think in the end it was probably just scheduling or whatever, but it did go quiet very suddenly.
Oh yeah. I'm sure it's not.
Yeah. I think we've said in the past how close we were to getting, for example, Rebecca Sugar. Like we were in discussions with Rebecca Sugar's like agent, I guess. I don't think it's a secret. I think we've said that before. It's a shame it didn't work out.
Fine.
I think we've talked about it, but yeah, it didn't work out.
Maybe if you hadn't shat so hard on our movie, Dan, it would have been all right.
Yeah. But yeah, there were a couple people we were reaching out to, we were in talks to, but it's not like they all went silent at the same time. It was all just like, it just never didn't quite plan out. But anyway, with Avatar, they're making new stuff. There's new animated stuff being produced as we're speaking, so there'll be new stuff for us to analyze. So analyzing Avatar probably won't be going anywhere. It's more just going to be, we're taking a break until the stuff to discuss. We'll do one more like a question, responding to question or comments from season 4 episode, and we may very well end up then doing like the occasional like post a short episode discussing if they release a trailer for something, or if they announce, a month or two after this finishing, if they announce, here's the new show and here's a trailer for it, maybe we'll do a short, like 15-20 minute little bonus podcast of like, we're excited and here's the trailer, and talking about what it might be and speculating and like doing stuff like that. But yeah, otherwise we're just kind of in waiting mode for new Avatar stuff. But the live action show exists as well, and I feel like a lot of the Avatar community came down harder on that show than they needed to, so there's probably a lot to discuss there. I think people weren't willing to give it the room to be its own thing. It's telling a different story, I think, ultimately than the animated one, and I think that's probably good. Because otherwise, it's funny because the same people who are going, there was no point in doing it, I've got the animated one, why would we just remake it in live action, are the same people coming down on it for doing different stuff. And I'm like, well, what do you want? Anyway, different issue. So yeah, we're here today to talk about Korra, Last Stand. Obviously, there's some big stuff to discuss from this episode, but we'll do a little tiny recap up front, just for anyone who doesn't quite remember how this series ends, although I'd be shocked if people don't remember the bigger beats of this episode. But they get inside the big robot at the end of the last episode. They successfully, across the first sort of 8 to 10 minutes of this episode, destroy it in pieces. We have Sue and Lin destroying the arm, or at least making it non-functional, so Kuvira rips it off herself. We have Mako and Bolin very dramatically taking out its sort of heart, the power source at the center of it, in a very dramatic way. We get some brotherly love. It's a nice thing. Bolin saves Mako as it explodes. We have Korra versus Kuvira 2, which I feel like some people are going to maybe feel was underwhelming compared to the build-up for the first fight. But we'll talk about it. It's its own thing. They have a little fight. Then this ship explodes. Then Kuvira finds the arm that was previously ripped off in the forest, tries to set it off. All the spirit vines sort of react to it, and it sort of goes hyper, and she tries to deactivate it. Doesn't work. It's aiming at her. It's about to kill Kuvira. Korra steps in. She manages to... she avatars harder. I don't know how else to describe this. I'm okay with this one, and we'll talk about the differences between Korra's use of her avatar powers here versus her use of avatar powers at the end of season 2. And it ends up resulting in the spirit vines and the energy, and all culminating in creating a brand new portal into the spirit world right in the heart of a public city in downtown. Kuvira and Korra have a heart-to-heart that leads to Kuvira turning herself in and officially giving up. Then we have the wedding, Varric and Julie, which leads to just a few little closing moments of character beats. We have Prince Wu just explaining that now it's all over. He's gonna, run a republic. We have Korra and Tenzin, and Korra and Mako both have a little moment each. And then we end, of course, on one of the most iconic images of this show. And actually, when we started doing Analysing Avatar, the only thumbnail I knew in advance was going to be the thumbnail for an episode was from pretty much the start of this endeavor. I knew the thumbnail for this episode was going to be Korra and Asami holding hands in the portal. Such an iconic image from this show as they go off on a little holiday, and I think indicate, maybe not strongly enough for some, and I respect that position and I understand that criticism, but clearly a romantic relationship confirmed right at the end there. So yeah, that's the what happens in the episode. And actually, now I'm saying it out loud and summarizing. Actually, it's a lot. Like it felt like it flew by, and there was only so much to talk about. But actually, now I've just laid it out. It does sound like a lot of things happened. So thoughts, just initial thoughts, Chris. Overall thoughts for this episode. How are we feeling now we've watched the final?
I think it's a good season finale. I think it is a. I don't know if it's the series finale they would have longed to make themselves, the creators, but given the budget constraints which we know about, and given all of that, I think they do a good job wrapping it all up. Would I have wanted more beats, maybe more series finale beats? Yeah, but you know what? We got the wedding. We got a lovely moment between Marco and Paolo. That's not his name. Bolin. Marco and Bolin.
I think Paolo is also a good name for Bolin. I'm learning, Chris, that in these sorts of things, it's good to just be supportive of people. And I think if you want to call him Paolo, I'm gonna support that.
I got up at 5:45 a.m. for the podcast. I apologise. But I should also. I had the response to that is quite rightly. You've also been talking about this show for nearly 100 episodes or whatever it is, 80, whatever the episode count is.
Yeah. I think we're at 108, 109, something like that. I think in Korra, maybe 100. Maybe we're on 111. I think actually on Avatar.
Of Korra specifically?
No, sorry, of Avatar and Korra both together. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I've been talking about Marco and Bolin for however long that is.
I can find that out pretty quickly. How many episodes in are we? We are 52 episodes of Korra.
There you go. So yeah, as much as I got up at with little sleep, I should know.
I think it would. The only one slightly worse would have been Korra, considering it's the name of the show.
Yeah.
What's her name? Camille. Camille, Camille, the lead character. Oh wait, no, it's Korra.
The Legend of Candy. So we got the two sisters fighting together. Mm-hmm. We got a load of great moments. I feel it was probably more of a season finale than it was a series finale.
Yep.
But I don't blame anyone for that, and that didn't necessarily hinder my enjoyment of it. But yeah, if you think about, but the trouble is, again, not the same show, not the same budget, but if you go in like for like, Sozin's Comet is pretty epic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the visuals of that are pretty epic and pretty amazing. But some of the visuals here, everything once we got the spirit world there, and we see that portal.
I mean,
all the spirit animals coming out of it.
Not to interrupt, but just on that point, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the moment that Marco is using his electricity to take out even though that's not the visuals of that, the lighting on that,
it's great,
and then the music, just wow, like that moment is astonishing. Yeah, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. There's brilliant stuff. So I was pleased. I thought it was really enjoyable. What about you?
Well, just on that point, I'm curious to ask a question of you. So we've talked a lot about the differences between this show and Avatar, and one of the things we highlighted very early on is this idea of this show is more series to series. There was always a problem of the year to figure out for each series of the show, right? So do you think in a world where that's what this show just is, a villain of the year, so to speak, or a villain of each book, what more could you have, what more would you have liked them to have done to make it more of a series finale? I'm just curious as to whether that's
I'd have loved if it was double length and we got more of those moments that I talked about. More. I think they did a great job, but I would have personally liked, and obviously there would have been, unfortunately and irritatingly, internal politics around this. And I think that actually what I suspect what they did show was considered quite groundbreaking for the time, even though it shouldn't need to feel like that. But I would have liked Korra, and personally would have liked Korra and Asami fleshed out a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think maybe a moment with the core gang. Obviously, you know what I'm like for an Avatar gang. Although there was quite a nice moment, I quite like the moment where they complete it and they all kind of they begin to hug, and you go, oh, Korra's Avatar gang is a lot bigger maybe than that original 5. It's all of them. It's Tenzin, it's the kids, etc. Maybe a moment of more with Tenzin's daughter. Maybe something about what the Air Nation is now, or because obviously we've seen them build over this season, but also equally we haven't gone back to that storyline for a bit. More wedding fun. Just basically, I think I would have personally, as a series finale, which again, and I think the reason I'm like, what we got was great, is because, like you say, it's season to season. It doesn't need to be this, but in terms of what I'd want as a fan, a double length episode where they can delve into those moments a bit more. And I think like I say, I feel like you can feel the writers wanting that. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Marco and Bolin say they love each other in this episode. It's fucking it's the series finale. Like, let's have a tender moment between them. Like, do you know what I mean? They've not particularly that's a storyline that's sort of been present but sort of not, and I think this series has a fair bit of that. So I think, just to be honest with you, what we got doubled and spread out over a double length episode, I think it would have been the dream.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I was just thinking about the Avatar finale, and if my memory serves me right, Aang sort of defeats Ozai halfway through the final part, Aang sort of puts an end to Ozai, takes his bending away, sort of 10 to 11 minutes, 12 minutes-ish into, and I have no way to look it up right now, exactly where that occurs in the episode, but my memory is it happens about halfway through. And then the last, 10, 11 minutes are Aang and the guys discussing what he just did, how he did it, mentions of the lion turtle. Then we have a couple of like epilogue scenes where we have Zuko seeing his dad in prison and being like, I don't need you anymore or whatever. And then we have another epilogue scene, which is kind of like the event that Aang shows up and he's in all fancy dress and they're sort of like hailing a new era. And then there's Aang and Katara alone, and I think that has them kiss, and that's the end of the show.
Yeah, so there's. Have
you got it in front of you? I was trying to pull it up, but I don't have Netflix, so I couldn't just like pull it up quickly.
He takes his bending away with 10 minutes 16 seconds left to go.
Perfect.
Well,
okay.
10 minutes 10 seconds. The blue light is in the sky, and as that blue light has left them and I've paused it, and it's 10:10.
Perfect. Okay, so that's almost exactly halfway through the episode. Then that's like just shy of that. So, or maybe just slightly over the halfway mark, but it's about halfway in the episode. So that leaves you with about 10 minutes left of epilogue, so to speak. And I was just thinking, Korra, I've not got the episode in front of me, but I'm willing to bet this episode. I'm willing to bet Kuvira holds her hands out and gets her handcuffs put in with like 8 minutes left. Like just a couple minutes less than what Avatar got from the moment that the action, so to speak, is over. And I think it's interesting that I agree with you that it all feels like way more rushed and like there's less closure. But I'm wondering why that is. And I'm thinking maybe I'm putting it into the wrong place because Avatar, the show, didn't have... It only had a couple minutes more of epilogue, to my memory, just from checking it out. I'd pull it up later and I'll double check the actual numbers. But I suspect this episode only had about 8 minutes to do the same thing, so it's only 2 minutes less.
Yeah, I'm just looking. So the sort of equivalent, I guess, the big yellow light coming out of the sky. And her getting arrested and then walking away with the yellow light. Well, here you go. Here's her getting arrested.
Yeah.
So when she's arrested, there's 7 minutes 42 seconds left.
There you go. Okay, so perfect. So it's about 2 minutes less. So I don't think that's a significant difference. 2 minutes, and you could quibble. I think anyone could quibble about 2 minutes and how much you could do in 2 minutes. But my thinking is the reason this one feels so much more like it needs a bit more epilogue-y stuff, last moments with various characters, a moment of maybe Aang's kids together, with Katara there at the wedding, like, just little finale stuff like that sprinkled in, is more because the show didn't give me that stuff across the last season. When I think about how the original show did it, the reason I didn't feel unsatisfied by only getting 10 minutes of sort of quote-unquote epilogue is because I'd already had all my big character moments and my big beats for all the characters across the final season. The season had been ending everyone's arcs slowly already. You know what I mean? And it ended a lot of those stories across those final 4 episodes. And whereas here, we were very much focused on take down Big Robot, take down Kuvira, and we weren't along the way giving the characters their moments. We tried it a little bit with Mako and Bolin in this episode, that they have the whole, the moment where they express that they love each other, and then Bolin comes back to save Mako. It's a nice moment, but there's a lot of characters that could have used moments like that. You know what I mean? That would have made this feel complete.
But I think that's it as well. There's you've just said the words. There's a lot of characters. I said the words earlier. Her team Avatar is a lot bigger, and I think it's that too. Like, this may be me not remembering properly because we haven't seen the original Avatar in so long.
Right.
But I feel like there were 5, 6 if you count Iroh, core characters with stuff that needed wrapped up in Avatar. Whereas here we've got the sisters, we've got what's going on with the Earth Kingdom, we've got what's going on with Tenzin and his family, we've got the air nomads, we've got the core 5 of them. Like, there's an awful lot. There's a lot more characters. There's the mayor and there's the fucking spirit. So the spirits now. they're now out, and so they're happy, and it's all good. Like, we've got spirits versus, the city, and all of that sort of stuff. There's a lot of big ideas and a lot of characters.
Chris, they played happy,
warm,
warm, peaceful music when the spirits came out. It's a good thing they're there. Listen to the music cue, mate.
Yeah, but this is it. But this is exactly my point.
No,
That's
agree.
why when you say what's your ideal, I'm saying
give me more time
this,
with that
but
stuff.
double, so that instead of happy music being played when the spirits come out, we get a scene of the spirits in the city, the spirits and the people of the city repairing the city. Because that's the other thing. This city's been fucking torn to fucking shreds quite drastically, quite a lot. So how great would it be to show the spirit animals, creatures, Spirit peeps and Republic City peeps working together to rebuild the city.
Actually, wouldn't that have been delightful? Actually, if basically Korra and Asami were like, "Let's go on holiday," they stand up, and then we sort of cut, and it's like the next morning, like the sun's rising, and they're walking through Republic City, and you see the mayor like outside City Hall shaking hands with a spirit, and then you see spirits and humans working together to put the city as they walk through it towards the portal. Then you have them go in the portal. Yeah, you're right. That would have been nice. I know you don't want to take focus off the moment of them two coming together, but like that would have been nice, I think.
It's those kind of things, and I feel like if that's why, like I say, my answer to the question, what would you change, is like, I literally think, they did versions of that. Like you say, we've got Marco and Bolin. We've got the Earth guy being like, you know what, I don't think we should use that system, which I thought was great. Love that scene. Great way to show his growth. Great way to wrap up that story. Really liked that. You know what I mean? More of that kind of thing, which is why it's not particularly a huge criticism of the episode, especially when you factor in the constraints that they were under. But it's literally, I think, it's exactly what we got, but the ability to have more of that.
And I think that would also help the episode pacing-wise in other ways as well, because it feels like the goal of the last episode was like, get them inside, but once they're inside, there's still an obstacle to overcome. And like, it takes them like, I don't know, 7 minutes of screen time, 8 minutes of screen time to overcome the obstacle, which is the big robot. And I appreciate when you put them together, that's an episode and a half. And I'm not dismissing that fact, but it doesn't change the fact that within the context of this specific 22 minutes of TV, it almost feels too quick and too easy. I think Lin and Sue go in and they just trash the arm and it's just done. And then Marco and Bolin go in and like they try to pull the levers, that doesn't work. And like, all right, electricity it is. Like those things do feel.
And there's
quick.
Also tied to all of this, I think there's a much bigger discussion point which we've not touched upon yet, which again, potentially having double in an ideal world, and I'm sure they feel that as well. I'm sure if anyone's listening to this, they're like, fucking hell, first you shit on the Steven Universe movie, and now you tell us what we fucking know. But
we had a review that complained about how much we talk about Steven Universe on iTunes.
Did we?
Yeah, it was amazing. I'll find it for later. It's great. I'll find it in a second. You carry on your point.
We also, I think if someone was to do the numbers, we probably talk about like sandwiches and food as much as we talk.
I think when we first started, we were worse. I think because we just come off Steven Universe, so it was our closest frame of reference. I think because we just done a whole podcast on it. But yeah, like it made me chuckle. I found a review the other day, and they give us like 1 star and really complained about it. And I thought that was very funny. I'll find it in a minute. But
fair enough. Apologies. Sincerely, apologies you didn't enjoy it. So here's a discussion point that's tied into what you could do with more than, double the episode length. Is, given the series arc, given everything, is Iowa My Life enough of a reason for the, I can't remember it, but for the villain to just be like, well, no, it's over. I owe her my life. She saved me, so I better stop. I better stop this rampage. Let's talk about that, because again, if the episode's double, I think you're able to sort of play with that stuff more. I was sort of sat watching it going, wait, what did she want again? Like, it made me forget like her original like intent. Oh, she just wanted to rule everything, didn't she? So yeah, I don't know. Maybe she sees the destruction that she's caused and goes, "Oh God, if ruling everything means destroying it, it's not worth it." I don't know, but I just feel like the spirit world appears, and that's like not necessarily been relevant or linked to her plot. So like, and somehow it's like, spirit world and Korra saved my life. Put down your big hop out your big machines. What? Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I don't think the show creates a great case for this logic of Korra and Kuvira are the same.
No, that's what they were going for.
Yeah, I don't think they do a good job of that. They have a really cool. There's a really great visual representation of that. I love that when they first go into the spirit realm, what do you want to call it? Like they're facing each other, and Korra. The moment we visualize Korra realizing her and Kuvira are in many ways the same, is she sees herself, and that morphs into Kuvira, and that's when she realizes. Just from a visual perspective, right? Just from a sort of like, I don't know. Just from a visual storytelling perspective, I love that. I think that's great. It's a great use of the spirit world's ability to distort reality. It worked for me, basically. I don't think it's... I think the actual idea is undercooked and tacked on, but the visual of her realizing by literally seeing herself in Kuvira is brilliant. So I want to get that out of the way first, because I want to compliment that thing. But yeah, I don't think the show creates a great case for them being the same. The exchange that follows is really the problem. Like, the visual idea of it is fine, but that conversation comes down to, we both wanted to feel in control and protect people following what Zahir did. And I guess that's true, but I feel like it's, one, vague and sort of wishy-washy as a reason. But that leads to it feeling a bit unsatisfying, because it's just not enough to then make me believe in Kuvira's shift to apologizing and turning herself in. And I know it's supposed to be coupled with Korra sacrificing herself, or potentially sacrificing herself for Kuvira. She does say, when she goes to get in handcuffs, I wrote this down to give it as much credit as I can, I owe the Avatar my life. Her power is beyond anything I could ever hope to achieve. I'll accept whatever punishment the world sees fit. Now, I am okay with that being the final destination of this villain, whose initial idea was, my beloved Earth Kingdom is in chaos. I will unite it, and if I have to rule it by force and as a dictator, then I will. But I will unite it. I will bring it under thumb. I will control it. And a lot of the ways that does kind of link to Korra, because a huge part of Korra's arc, and we're going to talk about this later, is her lack of feeling in control. And that actually goes back to the episode we, at the time, criticized, episode 9, Beyond the Wilds, for something, and I'm going to have to eat some crow. Is that the phrase, eating crow? Is that the phrase when you sort of have to go back and admit you're wrong? I think that's the phrase. Because Korra literally says in that episode that it's about, not having the, not feeling like she's in control. And that's a big part of her journey this season. So I sort of see, when I break it down, the loose threads that are similar enough that you could tie them together and say that's the arcs for these characters and that's how they come together in this moment. But they don't successfully tie them together, in my opinion, in the dialogue exchange. And that was their opportunity to do it. And I think... basically better and different dialogue in that exchange between Korra and Kuvira, and as Kuvira turns herself in, would have genuinely just fixed that. I don't even think it needs more time, because what they end up saying to each other is kind of meaningless, and I feel like, not meaningless, but it's waffly, is my point, and it doesn't really get to the heart of what's going on. I'm happy for Korra to point out that actually she has empathy for Kuvira because she's realized they're the same. But I think it doesn't lay it out cleanly enough for me to believe that it's enough to change Kuvira's mind. That's where I struggle with it, and I think I think the issue is also it's a more complicated idea than this TV show is giving them time to explore. I think the actual character arcs of this season are maybe a bit too ambitious for them to have properly laid out and explored thoroughly, and I think that's a little true of Korra's arc as well, although I think that fares better now. I've kind of had a chance to think it through, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, in terms of Kuvira's arc, trying to take back control following what Zahir did is what Korra is also doing. She's just handling it differently. And fear of not being in control of your own destiny and fear of the unknown and knowing that not everything in life is in your control, I do understand as a character motivation. They just don't lay it out cleanly enough that I go, okay, I understand why Kuvira turned herself in at the end. Especially considering where she was, 20 minutes earlier when she, was quite happy to say, or maybe 40 minutes earlier in the context of the show, happy to blow up her own boyfriend or husband or whatever they were up to, fiance. I can't remember what their relationship status was, but whatever it was, I'm not checking her Facebook.
Which is another thing we don't loop back to. And look, I'm not saying we need to.
No.
But equally, him, yes, he did the right thing, and that's an example where they have tried to sort of conclude that story before the finale. But an interaction of him and his parents or something, or visiting her or whatever. I agree with you about it being there but not being particularly clean. Like, almost to the point where I'm like, does she just, is it actually she just accepts defeat? Like, instead of sort of having to have this sort of reasoning, or maybe it's just muddied because she specifically says, Korra, I owe her my life. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, they try that too, though, don't they? Because they have her say that I owe my life to the Avatar. That's argument for why she turns herself in one. Bit thin. I owe my life, so I'm not going to be a bad guy anymore. Seems like a flimsy way to change your opinion, but that's fine. It's only part one of the sentence. Then it's, her power is beyond anything I could ever hope to achieve. So is that just submitting to the superior power of the Avatar and going, this isn't the will of the Avatar? I guess I'm Team Avatar now, in the sense of, not Team Avatar in the sense of I'm joining her, but like Team Avatar in the sense of I'm on her side of the argument all of a sudden. I no longer want to be a dictator. You know how I've been a fascist all year? I'm not going to do that anymore. like I don't know. It seems it's a tough thing to, that would be a tough thing to sell me on in the best of circumstances. That shift, I don't. I think that's what it comes down to. I think ultimately we can sit here and analyze why it doesn't work all we want, and there could be essays written on it, tens of thousands of words analyzing everything these characters say across the season, trying to figure out how we got there and whether it functions. But the reality is, I don't believe that it functions. I didn't buy it as a viewer who sat down and actually watched this episode twice today, because I was really trying to get my head around the Korra character arc. Well, we'll get to that bit later. I want to talk about the Korra Asami stuff with Chris first, but from the Kuvira moment is my only real criticism of this episode, because it just flat did not work for me on either viewing. Both times, I did not buy it. And I know usually what we do here on Analysing Avatar is trying to figure out why that is. And I honestly can't tell you, other than the writers failed to make me believe it with the writing. And that really comes down to the dialogue and the expressions of the character stuff that they have in those two opportunities that they're given in this episode. So, yeah. And maybe they could have laid more stuff in the last few episodes, but obviously they were too busy in being interested in making Kuvira like the ultimate sort of evil to do. She never really got that level of nuance. We actually talked earlier this season about Kuvira's lack of nuance across the season, and we're complimenting, actually, it's okay that this season we just saw a really straightforward villain that doesn't have a complicated past or beliefs beyond just what the obvious thing she wants to achieve. We were complimenting the season on that because we'd had several seasons of people with really complicated backstories and belief systems. So having someone as straightforward as Kuvira was a good thing. But it kind of bit them on the ass a bit here, because having her change. Because also, why have her change? Why not just have Korra come out of the portal and still be just like being like Korra just being like, yeah, handcuff her, and she's like, I'll get you next time, Avatar. I'm okay. I would have been okay with that.
Yeah, I think I would have been too.
Why attempt to have Kuvira have shifted in some way, have changed in some way. I mean, I guess we want to sort of demonstrate Korra's newfound empathy has worked, but there's better ways to do that, I think. But yeah, there you go. It is what it is. Let's talk about Korra, Salmi. As you have long predicted, Chris, the episode ends on the delightful moment, and the iconic moment of the two of them going on their little vacation together, holding hands, embracing. How did you feel about it in general? Do you think it worked?
Look, it's one of those things where I loved it in the sense of them as a couple. Hashtag justice for Asami. They've got great chemistry. It's great to see. We love the Asami character. I think we're also, maybe me a little bit sometimes more than yourself, big fans of Korra. So them being together is amazing. I think it works. Would I have liked it embedded in more, especially over the last few episodes? Yeah. I sort of there was that moment, I can't remember what it was, but there was that moment, fairly recently, which made me go like, oh yeah, I think this might be where we're heading. But then they didn't really touch it for the last few episodes. They didn't do more. Oh, I think it wasn't it like when was there a moment when they first reunited? Mm-hmm. And they talked about each other, like she said, oh, I really like your hair, and Korra went a bit red and embarrassed, in quite a sweet, cute way. So, there was that moment, and there's been other moments and stuff, but I think, that exploration, although again, they this but more, her saying, I never really apologized when I went away. I'm really sorry. That felt like, oh, great, we've picked up that thread. I thought that was really nice, and it's one of those things where are there things in the execution of it that I wish there were more of? Yes, but I'm fucking glad they did it. Like I think it was brilliant to do. I think it fit the characters, and I think you just gotta live in your head about what they went on to do and stuff like that. It was funny. I after I saw it, I searched their names into YouTube to see if there were like montage videos or anything like that.
Oh man, I can't imagine YouTube disappointed on that one.
No, but equally there wasn't like usually you see things like a complete timeline of this romance. Like what was the show recently that also, spoilers, had an iconic I don't want, well no, I don't think it's vague. Well, I'm not going to name the characters, so I suppose that's okay. The witches thing on Disney Plus. We loved it. Great show.
The Witches
What
thing?
was that show? Yeah, she goes into a realm and like she ends up living with a witch and she's learning to be a witch. What the hell's that show called? Why can't I remember that show?
Oh, the animated show. When she was the Boiling Isles. Like it's
what's the
show called?
What's that show called?
Oh, Owl House. I remembered.
Owl House. Thank you. So you look at the road.
In my head, by the way, you were talking about a live action show, and I was like, "What show other than Agatha All Along is about witches on Disney?" I was like, "Hocus Pocus 2 doesn't count."
Animation. You Google that couple on
Yes.
you search that couple on YouTube, and it's like complete timeline, and there's like 30-minute videos of all these compiled clips. If you Google Korra and Asami, one of the top videos. Let me get the phrasing is right. The phrasing right. I don't want to. Hold on. But there's a really interesting thing regarding a kiss, which I'll show in a minute. Korra Asami. Right. Yeah. So almost the top video is Korra and Asami. Heart for 2 minutes straight. And I'm like, yeah, how have you even got 2 minutes out of it? And I watch it, and there's some clips which are just like battle scenes that they were in together. And those are me criticizing the video. It's a great video. It's a really lovely video, and it's nice to see the moments that are there. But I wish there were more moments. Well, but that doesn't mean that wish is not so strong that I'm like, you shouldn't have done it. Because I think they were absolutely right to do it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's lovely. Someone has created it's like on there as a short. They've done a fan-made version of them in the portal where they do kiss, and it's so good. I don't know if you've got access to anything to watch it now, but I had to Google. I'm like, did they cut a kiss or something?
Right.
So I Google it, and I'm like, Asami Korra kiss cut. I'm like, maybe Netflix cut it. And there's loads of people on Reddit that are multiple people that are where's the kiss? Did they cut the kiss? And all the comments are like, no, they never kissed. They just held hands. But there's fan-made versions and fan art of them kissing. You're probably just remembering that. And there's so many people that are like, I swear they kiss. And all the comments are like, no, it's just fan-made. Which is astonishing. It shows you how strong this sort of fan-made thing is. But yeah, no, they don't kiss. Do I think they needed to have kissed? It depends on the view. Did they need to kiss to make a statement and to fully kind of... did they need to kiss in order to be to show that, to have that representation? Yeah, probably. Do I think actually that kissing in that moment fits the characters and where they were at? No. I think agreeing to go away together and spend some time together on their own and holding hands actually feels right for the place the characters were in at that moment.
Yeah.
I think they will kiss. I think they will get together. But they had to do some writing around the fact that Asami's dad had just died. They had to have that sort of I couldn't have lost you both in one day dialogue to sort of go to not pretend that hadn't just happened. As again, that's not necessarily a moment that we've seen that we got to see the aftermath of in terms of Asami's grief and all of that sort of stuff. Again, take a shot. If it was double the length, maybe we could have. But I just think that whilst I can understand why people wish they'd kissed, and in terms of, like I say, the representation of it, which is incredibly important, would it have been great for them to kiss? Yes. But actually, I feel what they did, the hand-holding, stepping in the portal to spend some time, just the two of them, get away from the madness of it all, and truly explore what their feelings are, that feels right. I think that feels absolutely right for the characters. I think they made the right choice for the show and the characters with that one. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and I think actually, to be honest with you, it kind of take another shot. It stops it being Yaz and the Doctor for me. If they'd have kissed, or that had been a lot more, there's the potential, especially when it hasn't been as embedded in as it should be. There's the potential that I'm sat here going, did they do that storyline because fans wanted the two of them to hook up and fans were talking about it? Is that why they've done that? Which is how Doctor Who felt when they did Yaz and the Doctor. It just felt like added on to later seasons, and it just felt like a response to something the fans had been saying. And I think if and the sort of teasing of it, but still having the big conversations about it and having really overt moments, where Dan talks to, Dan saying to Yaz about her feelings is more overt than anything they've done here. And I think if you have a kiss or something really overt here, there's a danger that it doesn't feel right for the characters. Whereas the beat they leave it on for the characters and where they're at is, we've both been through a lot of trauma. The way we want to deal with this trauma is to be alone together. And you can interpret what that means as, well, maybe there's a reason for that and there's something to explore here. And I think that's wonderful. And I think that actually, whilst I would have liked to have seen a kiss for all the representation reasons, I'm really glad they didn't, because I think actually they did something that felt at pace with that story and that storyline. And I really like that. So yeah, I really liked it. What about you? What are your feelings on it?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask about sort of towards the beginning when you were speaking, like, did you think, like, to play devil's advocate, do you think it was a deliberate choice not to have them kiss because their relationship just simply wasn't that far along? It kind of feels...
Yeah, exactly.
It would... Like, you're right, in terms of representation and breaking another glass ceiling as soon as possible and as hard as possible, because I'd like upsetting conservatives. Yes, 100%. Have a big old smooch. Like, do it. Do it. Annoy everyone. I'm on board with that, and I would never complain about that in a million years, because I'm on board for as much representation as possible. There's a lot of work we got to do before those scales are balanced culturally.
Yeah.
So let's just go nuts. We might as well, right? So I'm on board with that. I'm on the representation train. I'm one of those weird woke lefties that wants tons of representation on TV.
Whenever I hear, and it's unfortunately in the UK at least, it's not often with sexuality, because funnily enough, the people that feel this way, maybe there's a stereotype that they don't seem to have a problem with certain types of sexuality anyway. But whenever I hear that argument, or not even argument, because I don't think it's as sensible as forming an argument. But whenever I hear someone say, "Oh, and of course there's got to be someone in a wheelchair in it," or "Oh yeah, and of course this character's got to be gay," or "Oh well that doesn't make sense because characters of that race just weren't in that job in that time period." Whenever I hear that argument, I'm always like, well, you could then, if that's an issue for you, why don't you go and watch the other 60 years of television that we've had?
Not even 60 years.
Exactly that.
Flip over the channel.
Exactly.
No, just change the channel. Because statistically, they're probably not on the other side. There are 5 main terrestrial channels in the UK, right? And if there's representation happening on one of them, I guarantee you there is 0 representation happening on the other 4, right? I'm sorry. That's how it is so out of proportion, even now.
Exactly. It's exactly that tipping the scales thing. Like, it really happened. There were 2 that I think it was a particular commercial, and also they had a dancer in a wheelchair on Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway. And I did hear literally people say, "Oh, we need our dancers to be in a wheelchair," and I'm just sat there like, well, you clearly don't have anyone, and I don't. Like, I'm not saying
how many episodes have they done of Saturday Night Takeaway?
Yeah, exactly. It's like its 11th season or whatever.
Right. So how many episodes? How many episodes sans dancer in a wheelchair before we got to an episode?
Exactly.
With
every
one?
every other season.
Yeah.
And I'm just sat there like, what I want to scream to these people is, and I'm like, yeah, but you don't have anyone. And again, I'm not saying I do, but it's just like you. I align with your views on this stuff. It's just like, but you don't have anyone in your life that's in a wheelchair, then, do you? You don't have a child that's in a wheelchair that wants to be a dancer. You don't have someone in a wheelchair looking at the TV going, where am I in this world? Where do I fit? Oh, we need a character. Oh, we need a wheelchair ramp on the TARDIS. Yeah, because there's fucking children with disabilities looking at the TARDIS going, well, practically speaking, I wouldn't be able to get in there. And so who gives a fuck? Because if sorry.
And it was I've got to tell you that it was 2 seconds of an episode of Doctor Who that Chris is referring to here, where the Doctor revealed that you can slide a little tiny ramp out of the front. It's been hidden the whole time. It will continue to be hidden. So you can't even make the complaint of, I just don't like how it changes the design of the TARDIS because now the TARDIS has a little ramp. No, it slides out and is otherwise completely invisible.
Exactly. It's madness to me, this argument, and people not thinking... you've spent more time and obviously we've spent a lot of time discussing about it now, but it is linked to this subject. You've spent more time complaining about that ramp than that ramp was on screen for.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, your fucking feelings about it do not equate to the fucking joy and comfort that a child with a disability might get from watching it.
Agreed.
If you're asking, personally, if you're asking me to pick, I'm going with making that child's day any day of the fucking week. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, from that argument, it would have been good to see them kiss, but I don't feel it would have been right for the characters.
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting to, because I think for me, I'm with you in that I just think like, that's not the story we told here, right? And I actually wanted to go back to what you talked about the videos. Oh, this show has a relationship that built up over 7-8 seasons and got to here. And this show did this, and this show did that. And there's all these like love stories that develop over it. I don't think this was a love story. This was a story of someone noticing the person that was there the whole time right at the end of the story of them figuring themselves out. The story wasn't the birth or the growth of a love between two people. This is someone figuring themselves out, and then the minute they do that, finding someone to maybe start exploring that with. This is the start of the relationship. And that's what we were getting to. So, like, this isn't about the fact that these two have had a really close relationship for years in that romantic sense, and we've built that up. This is they're telling a different story here. And I think, it's going to sound devil's advocate-y, and I hate when people do that, but I think here we can probably give the writers some credit and assume that that's what they were going for, rather than just that they didn't embed it enough. That's the credit I'm going to give them here. I'm going to assume that the goal in this one was to have two people in each other's lives, really close friends, who then discover they might, once a tumultuous time in their lives sort of comes to an end, they sort of discover they might feel more for each other than they thought. And they go off on a holiday to explore that possibility. What if we just go hang out for a couple of weeks? You know? Will that lead to some smooching? Maybe. Maybe it will. But even if it doesn't...
Are you still talking about Legend of Korra, or are you pitching you and me going away on a little vacation?
Well, I mean, I was trying to be subtle about it, but...
Oh, well. I'm picking up what you're fishing.
My question now is, how much content from all of our years of podcasting could people put together in a montage of us slowly?
Look, I stand by everything you just said about it being the start of a relationship and deliberate. So this isn't a dig, but a lot more than they could put together for Korra and Asami.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and again, I think I would put some money on that being a choice. That wasn't the story. The story wasn't about that relationship flourishing. The story was about them getting to a point where they could start exploring that, and that's the note we end on. Would I have liked a 5th season, seeing more from this world and that relationship development? Yeah, absolutely, I would have done, sure. But is this also a nice way to end it? Feeling like we've got Korra in a good place emotionally, and with Asami. Yeah, I like that too. That's nice also. It feels like a happy ending to me. The idea that she's open enough to be willing to explore that relationship. I don't know. I liked it. But, right. We're getting quite far into the podcast, and we haven't tackled what I think is maybe the biggest topic we need to cover today. So I'm gonna move us on, if that's okay.
You've teased a lot, and I have little to no opinion on this. So, Dan, tell me, what do you think of Korra's? I don't. I have opinions, but I don't feel them, and I've not spent the work digging into what I feel about it like you have. So, Dan, how do you feel now that the series has ended?
Yeah.
About Korra's series arc?
Yes. Complicated. It's very complicated, and I feel like they added extra bells and whistles to it in a way that ultimately maybe hurt it a little. But now we're at the end, I can safely say 2 things. 1, we definitely were burnt enough from season 2 that we were quick to jump down the show's throat before it got to its completion. A couple of times this season, we were very quick to judge a choice before we got to see how it played out, and we were wrong to do that, and I regret that, to a degree. Obviously, I can only ever stand by my reaction to the episode as I watch it, and I did not have the hindsight this year that I usually have, because this is the season I've seen the least, it's the season I'm least familiar with. I had the most question marks around. It's just a fact. Just couldn't remember how this series ended at all. And we'll talk about it later on. I did not remember how the Prince Wu storyline ended as well, and we'll have to talk about that, because that's also kind of funny, the way they ended that, considering my complaints earlier in the season. Another moment of where I've, hindsight being 2020, So let's break it down. So for those who don't remember, we talked a lot this season about the different moments in which Korra seemingly got over her trauma, got over her issues, then didn't successfully do that. And I was like, maybe the story is about her learning that easy fixes aren't the solution. She needs to work on herself. And I wanted a moment where it felt like she worked on herself. But then she had that weird moment with Zahir that I criticized heavily. That's from episode 9, where she went to see Zahir and then came out and said, I'm finally going to accept what happened, and I think that's going to make me stronger. And I was like, accept what? Exactly? Like, this is so vague, and I was so frustrated. And I was like, I don't care for this at all. And in my head, I was like, I think we're just barreling into the finale now from here. I don't know if we're getting too much more from Korra plot-wise in terms of her arc. But I've come to realize this was a story all about how my life got flipped, and no, I couldn't resist. No, this is a story about Korra getting over trauma and essentially some variant of PTSD. And they added bells and whistles on it that distracted from that. Other elements of her psyche got muddled in, and I think that's realistic, and I think that gives it a lot of depth. But they're 20-minute episodes, and they never really got as much time to lay it out neatly. Therefore, maybe some of those bells and whistles and extra little bits should have been taken away, because it would have simplified it and made it a lot clearer, and would have made me less likely to be frustrated as I watched. But being able to see it from a bird's eye view, now I've seen it all. I love the idea that ultimately Korra feels that learning compassion was the journey she was on, so she could save the day with it. My initial feeling was that felt tacked on and not really present in the rest of the season. And when I was watching this episode today, and she said, all of the stuff I've gone through has gotten me to this place where I learn compassion. But that's actually the point. She's decided, she's chosen to make her suffering mean something. She dealt with the trauma, then she gave the journey meaning. That's the point. That is actually a choice. Not bad writing, but actually the choice they've made. So basically, ultimately, what this season was about, when you boil it down, she had the trauma, both physical, suffering at the hands of Zahir, and mental suffering, because that undercut all of her assumptions and confidence about her place in the world. Her sense of self crumbled at the same time she had physical suffering with the poisoning from Zahir. Both happened simultaneously. Now, this season has several moments of her tackling her trauma, but different aspects of it. So she tackled the physical suffering when she was mentally prepared to remove the poison from herself that she had been holding on to. Then later in the season, she is choosing to face her trauma directly by going to see the person who undercut her place in the world, by facing Zahir. And in that conversation, he realizes he needs to help her because he also wants her to take down Kuvira. We talked about why in that episode. Go check out our episode 9 review. But that helps her accept that it happened. Acceptance was the goal. Acceptance of both what happened and, we go back to this one, her lack of ability to control it. There's a line in episode 9 where she talks about not feeling in control. And that's a big part of this too, because it was taken away from her. She had no choice in what happened to her in her last season. And victims of crimes and assaults and anything that can cause a trauma also feel loss of control. That's a big part of when people have PTSD and trauma. So the goal of this season was for her to accept what happened and her lack of ability to control it. Because once she achieved that, she was then able to look back on it and see the good, the potential good that came out of it, which is the compassion that she now sees in herself, she now has and can apply to the world and her role as the Avatar. So she made her suffering mean something for herself. And I think the issue that I experienced as I watched it this season was, as we were analysing it, it was written in a slightly muddled way sometimes, where like other ideas would get pulled in and make it less clear. It's like looking at a character arc through glass, and like the nonsense around it would fog it up. But I actually, having watched this now, and I'm looking at some of those bells and whistles, the things that muddied it for me, and actually some of those also fit with this new view I have on her arc for the season, because one of the things that was a running theme this season that I felt at the end was a bit disconnected was this idea that she was frustrated no one trusted her anymore. She didn't feel like anyone believed in her anymore. But no, that's a side effect of the PTSD. She was doubting herself and putting that on other people. That doubt was hers and hers alone. And she was applying it to those around her. When Tenzin very reasonably said, I don't know that'll work, just being reasonable, she took that as, he doesn't believe in me, because she wasn't believing in herself. And that's a really clever bit of writing, but we didn't have enough time to really explore that in any depth beyond that. So it's kind of just like a little nugget for you to pick up on and enjoy if you want, little nugget of character arc. But it feels to someone watching it more casually, I imagine, like a loose thread that doesn't go anywhere, because she talked several times this season about feeling like everyone didn't trust her. And there was never like a, stereotypically with a show like this, if a character has a feeling like my friends don't believe in me, you have a moment where they realize actually they do. And that never comes. But that never comes because the idea was that it was all in her head. And I appreciate that as a concept. That's powerful. But she never expresses that. So we're left to work this out ourselves. And while that does feel clever and like it has a lot of depth, again, in a show of this nature, with this sort of time frame where you're only getting these 20-minute episodes that are mostly filled with action, let's be honest, exploring ideas that complex is a lot. And the other bell and whistle that I wasn't sure really fit into it, that I sort of changed my mind on as we were going on it, we talked a lot at the beginning of the season as well about the idea that she couldn't remove, she couldn't bring herself to remove the poison. And I assumed at the time that was to do with, like, she likes not being the Avatar now because, like, last year she had the idea of who the Avatar is and what she is the Avatar shattered. And now it's just, like, easier to not be that. But there was never a moment when she sort of, like, there was kind of a moment when she chose, when she removed the metal, but it wasn't very clear as to what changed in her that allowed her to do that. And looking back at it now, I think no wonder she couldn't bring herself to remove the poison. That would make her the Avatar again, and being the Avatar was what led to her initial trauma. If she'd just been a normal kid from the Southern Water Tribe, she wouldn't have been poisoned and attacked by Zahir in the first place. He came after her because of her avatariness. That was the point, right? She was a power in the world he wanted to take out. And I think the call to solve the problems in the Earth Kingdom was a thing she physically knew she had to do. And that's pushed her into making the choice to sort of come back. To help others. And that comes back to the compassion. So it all does link in, because without that compassion, without feeling for others, she never would have pushed past her anxieties about becoming, and I don't mean becoming the Avatar literally, obviously, she's always technically the Avatar, but by stepping back into that role after 2 years away, that choice comes because she now has a new compassion, and she can't hear about the suffering of the people of the Earth Kingdom without going, no, we're doing this. So that moment we criticize where she just could take the metal out of herself all of a sudden, now in context is kind of genius, because it's the moment she finds out other people are suffering. And this whole season was about her realizing that her journey of getting over trauma actually made her a more compassionate human being, and potentially an even better Avatar than she was when she started. That's quite a big rant. And I am sorry. But there's a lot to cover.
Yeah, and I know I'm repeating this a lot this episode. But again, I feel like that's why this Avatar has a greater link with, and the stories have been so centered around her and the spirit world.
Yes.
And the connection to the spirit world. And I just think a scene of her when the spirit animals come out in this episode, interacting with them, or her being the one just before she goes on vacation or at the wedding to indicate that she is helped by showing compassion and encouraging others to show compassion. She has helped that divide and that difficult relationship between the spirit world and the human world. I would have liked that to kind of add another bow to your argument, but I think that all makes complete sense when you lay it out like that. I think like you say, we were we didn't realize these things when it was playing out, and some of the criticisms in hindsight, maybe incorrect.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I'd like to add, actually, and I'm glad you said that, because that's reminding me of one of the point I wanted to make, is obviously all of this culminates in her choice to throw herself between the big spirit beam and Kuvira. Because she's so compassionate now, she sees herself in Kuvira and is willing to sacrifice herself for Kuvira. She is such a selfless person now. Last year when Zahir said, "It's you or the Airbenders," she ultimately chose to sacrifice herself, but not without a lot of debate. Because at first, her ego stepped in and went, "Well, you're the Avatar. You're important, aren't you? Maybe you shouldn't die. Maybe we do let the Airbenders go. The planet needs the Avatar." She actually had that debate. She talked about it with Zuko. Like, that was a discussion she had with herself. In this series, following those events, a spirit beam specifically designed to destroy turns around and is pointing at Kuvira. Korra gets between the two, and she's so at one, quote marks, now with the spirit world. She is now so compassionate. She has crossed some sort of threshold to a new level of power. Zahir said it 3-4 episodes ago. I think your power is pretty limitless. Is what Zahir said to her, because she was like, "I feel powerless right now," and he's like, "Actually, I think your power is limitless. You that poison should have killed you. The fact that you survived that at all is insane." Like, Zahir points this out. So that she stands between Kuvira and that death beam, and all it does is open up a portal to the spirit world instead of killing her. I think that is the moment they're telling us, and I agree with you. It could have been clearer. There are things we could have done that would have made this clearer, 100%. But I think that's them threading that needle and tying that bow on all of these things. She's taking control. She's making that choice. She's over her trauma. She's stepping in front of it without a second thought, through compassion for a person who has caused so much harm for others this season. And the end result of her making that correct choice is we've brought the world closer to the spirit world again. We've opened another door. The thing she literally has been wanting to do since the end of season 2. Bring the spirits and the human world back together. I don't think it's as clean as it could have been, and like you, a couple more minutes, some extra dialogue, some scenes between her and spirits would have been lovely, all of that stuff. 10 points, 100% agree, would have loved that. But for what we have in the 22 minutes we have, I actually do think the choice to make the big weapon that nearly kills Kuvira a spirit weapon and have it hit Korra and do nothing. And she doesn't know that's going to happen. When she makes that leap, she doesn't know she's surviving that. And again, the show could have made that clearer too, but it didn't. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant moment. I think it's a really powerful scene. I think that goes some way to doing what you were describing, but it doesn't quite explicitly lay it out as much. And some people are going to tell us it doesn't need to be that explicit. It can be subtext. That's fine. And look, if that's enough for you to do, and you think that's brilliant, and great, wonderful. But I feel like one of the strengths of Last Airbender was that it was able to really excellently and very succinctly articulate complicated character ideas in small interactions quickly, while also being a fun action show with jokes and punching. So I don't know why Korra isn't capable of doing the same as a show, but there you go.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it as a show. How do you feel about the show as a whole now? Then we've had 4 seasons, and actually, specifically, not just how do you feel about the show, what? And I don't think it's necessarily the answer you've just given in terms of Korra's arc, because as you've said many times, you don't remember this series as clearly. But what has changed in your view of this show doing a rewatch versus your feelings about it before we went through this exercise?
When people talk to me about this show previously, I always said its biggest crime was just not being as good as the greatest animated show of all time, but referring to the first show. I don't think that's quite true anymore. I feel like this experience has really taught me the show is a lot more flawed than my initial casual viewing of it was. I wasn't watching it to review it. I was watching it for funsies, and funsies I had, right? I enjoyed the show. I liked the plots. I liked the characters. There was some good action, good fun times. Varric being Varric, action, just jokes, all the stuff that you want from a show like this. I was just enjoying it. Sitting down and looking at it more analytically, realizing that so much of the character work, particularly season 2, doesn't function. And that's funny. I remember us starting season 2 and me being like, this is the one everyone says is the worst, but I don't remember it being that bad. Little did I know that I was going to come out and with my final feeling being that season 2 is very cleanly the worst season of this show. And in fact, if we would have just quickly lay it out, I think 2 is the worst, then it goes 1, then it goes 4, and then it goes 3. 3 is the best season of this show, and I think this season is the second best season of this show. But yeah, so I think this has changed.
I would need to look at it more. I'd have the same order, but in my memory, I'd be tempted to maybe switch this in one round. But I'd need to probably look at that.
Those are the closest two, I think. Like the two that I would struggle to place. Yeah. I think it's cleanly 3 is the best, 2 is the worst. I don't think that's even remotely disputable. I think where 1 and 4 go, 1 and 4. Like I could see somebody. I would not debate someone who had them the opposite way around to me. And I'm only feeling this way about 4 now because obviously I loved how that ended with the Asami, and I really enjoyed ultimately what we did with Korra's arc, because once I sat down and analysed it, I think that's a really satisfying experience. That's not going to be everyone's experience because, as I said, I don't think it's as clear as it could be. But there you go.
You've said sat down and analysed it quite a few times now, and the fact that you've not once taken the opportunity to go, analysing that Avatar, is upsetting.
You know what? It's unacceptable, and I'm sorry.
Just to interrupt, but it's a really good recommendation. There's a great clip. I think it's on Pete Holmes' Instagram. I've not listened to the full podcast, but Pete Holmes is interviewing Chris Sullivan, who played Toby in This Is Us. And Pete in the clip goes, this is us, eh? Wink, wink. And Chris Sullivan talks about how he'd tried to get that in to episodes multiple times. So like the character of Toby would be in a lift with someone, and Toby would just be like, man, this is us, eh? And they cut it every time.
Incredible.
It's a very funny clip. Check it out.
So this has shifted my overall view of the series, I think, to some degree. I've just also got a couple of other tiny bits we want to talk about, but like very small ones, but we'll get to those in a minute. But yeah, in terms of overall thoughts, I think I am now more willing to accept this show as quite a flawed creation. I think with the best of intentions, generally speaking. I think it had a lot of constraints. I think I respect it for trying something different and not just being lazily more Avatar, which it easily could have been. Going season to season with these storylines, really pushing it forward time-wise and actually really evolving the world was such a bold choice. Making the show more adult was such a bold choice that I respect. These are all good choices. The execution fell down a couple of times, but then some of that's going to be put down to this very unusual schedule they had, the tight budgets they had, the lack of faith from Nickelodeon, but also like just not knowing whether they had more coming or not. We talked a lot in the first couple of seasons about them not really knowing how much of the show there was going to be and never really knowing where to end it and how that affected plot lines. I think this show is kind of a miracle that it's as good as it is, considering all of that, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of barriers we've just listed in that. But yeah, I think I've still come out of this with a really positive view. I still really enjoy Korra, and it does still suffer for not being Avatar, but I do think it also suffers for its own flaws that it brought to the table itself very cleanly. So it's not as simple as that. So yeah, that's where I've landed. How do you feel about the show as a whole, having just sort of witnessed it for the first time?
I think that's a good summary. Like, it's the word I was thinking of before this podcast was patchy. Some real moments of greatness. Out of this series, we really praised Korra alone, and other episodes throughout the series run. I think it's just that inconsistency of 2 is bad. Like, there's some bad storytelling in 2. There's some amazing storytelling in 3. I think maybe my big learning, akin to your kind of, it's not that it's just not the greatest animation show, and also your thoughts on the Korra story arc, is that actually where they ended up this season of the gang of Korra's gang being a lot wider than that. It including the members of the Earthbending Nation. It includes Tenzin and his children, Varric and stuff. Which we haven't talked about their wedding, but I really like that, and it makes it different to Avatar. I think my issue is they refer to them as a gang, and the show itself draws those parallels early on, and it just made me really annoyed because it was claiming it was that, but it absolutely wasn't. But I think that space where we ended up of Korra had a bit more solo trauma and stuff to deal with, and had to spend more time alone. But actually, her gang, her family was a very wide net. Works, and I think that does work. And it makes the finale feel different. So much of, whilst we have other battles, the thing you remember about Sozin's Comet is the fight with Aang. That one-on-one between the Fire Lord and Aang. Like I say, I know there's other battles going on as well. But that's the iconic thing. Whereas this is the whole gang literally fighting one thing, so it makes it feel distinct and different. So yeah, I've come around on that a bit. Old Venipoo's got married, Dan. You must have been thrilled.
Yeah, it's delightful, isn't it? I keep thinking of Bolin's line. We gather here today to celebrate the wondrous and at times inexplicable bond between Sir Varric and Lady Julie. It's a great line.
I really liked as well, instead of saying, you may now kiss, it was do the thing.
Yes, it's delightful. It was just a really nice simple button that also gave us an excuse to have some extra fun little moments. So we see Sue's family reunited at the wedding. Season one's partial villain, the guy that led the Wolf Bats, is the trombonist in the band for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't know who that was, but I was like, well, that's got to be someone.
That's someone.
They've animated that.
Yeah, I think he's the trombonist. I can't remember what instrument he was playing. I think it was the trombone. But yeah, he's on stage performing, which I just think is delightful. Because if you remember rightly, his story ended quite sadly. He had his bending taken away, and he was a pro bender. So he's found music. I love that. That's a nice little. I didn't ask for that conclusion to that character, but I'm glad I got it. That's nice. We also obviously we see Bolin and Opal going to dance on the dance floor, even though they don't say anything. That's nice. They're still together. And the wedding is just a great excuse for us to get a few different little character caps, with that great moment between Korra and Mako. Which just her thanking him for his help and him sort of just being I'd follow you into fire, basically. I think is a really nice way to put a button on Mako's character arc, because it's that thing he said earlier in the season about how he just really respects Korra and her achievements. I think that's right. I think that's why their relationship is at now, and putting a little button on that is delightful. It was a nice moment. Obviously, the wedding itself is really just an excuse to do these things, because realistically, we got Varric and Julie together last episode. So this is just a fun way to have a celebration at the end of it. And it's perfect. It lines up very well. It's nice to see those two actually get to tie the knot. We can assume happily ever after, and we get to see all these different things. And then, of course, the final little button that they add through the wedding, which I delighted in seeing, is we took a beat for her and Tenzin to have a moment. And I just thought it's such that scene, so delightful. He says, Korra, you've transformed the world more in a few years than most avatars did during their lifetimes. And I just think the wonder and respect and the feelings Tenzin clearly has for what Korra has achieved. He's both amazed by her, but also loves her deeply and respects what she's done and all that stuff. It's all the warmth is just in the dialogue and the delivery. J.K. Simmons, of course, doing just a phenomenal job, just expressing that in his voice. And it leads to that lovely moment as well where he's sort of talking about how life's a bumpy ride. And that's actually where Korra expresses the thing I talked about earlier, where she says that, and it's the thing that actually really tied a big bow on my feelings about Korra's arc across this season, is when she says that, looking back on it, all that suffering is what's led her to being the compassionate person she is, and that there's good to have come out of it. And she's acknowledging she's rewriting history there, I feel. But that's kind of the point. So yeah, I all of the stuff with Korra and Tenzin, all those little beats we have from the wedding happening through to Korra and Asami getting in the portal, I think are all delightful, well written, and do a good job. We should talk about the other one though. There's one other moment we haven't covered, and it's a big one because I spent a lot of this season talking about politics. So let's just quickly cover.
I loved this. I thought it was great, and I knew you. I was like, oh god. Dan's going to have an erection for this scene.
Get you a partner that looks at you the way I look at Prince Wu in this moment. No, it's the most clean example of not trusting the writers that this whole season has. I think, because I still think there's a case to be made for the writers are somewhat responsible for my misunderstanding of Korra's journey, because it wasn't clear enough, right? I think I could make an argument, and I'm actually feeling like it's a 50-50 situation where I'm not giving them the trust, but there are reasons for me to be not giving them the trust. Does that make sense? Because there's some things that are a bit bumpy or not quite clean and working out. But the cleanest example is my concerns at the beginning of this season, that the end of the season we were just going to be like, oh yeah, it's Prince Wu, I guess. That's better than nothing. Or it's better than Kuvira, at least. And I was like, we're doing this in real life. Well, we were at the time, even worse so. It was Biden-Trump was the election that we thought we were getting this year at the time we were recording those. So we made those comments. And I particularly
Can I just say, since you, at the start of this podcast, and I didn't say it because I was like, look, it's irrelevant to nothing. It could lead us to a tangent. I'm not going to say it. But as I was closing like tabs that were open for the start of the podcast, I just pulled it back up to get it. I saw the headline, and I just want to read the headline out now that you've mentioned Trump anyway, because it's even the way the headline was worded is amazing. It says this is on enemy.com. And it says, which is primarily a music site, but it says, Donald Trump demands the return of Johnny Carson, even though he's been dead for 20 years.
Yes, it's incredible.
I don't need to know anything else about that, but just that headline really made me chuckle.
Yeah, he was complaining about...
I interrupted you.
Is it Jimmy Kimmel's on CBS? No, it's Colbert on CBS. Yeah, he was like, oh, he's terrible. Bring back Carson. It's like, Carson's dead, buddy. Like, I don't know if you know that, but he's definitely... he's gone for a reason. Anyway, the guy's out of his fucking mind. Anyway, doesn't matter. It is a funny headline, though. I don't disagree. So for me, looking at this, I feel like the cleaner example than the Korra one of me just like not trusting the writers and being completely wrong is how they've handled Prince Wu. I had such concerns about the series ending with Wu sort of taking on the kingdom and still being a bit shit and just being like, that's better than Kuvira, and me being like, I hate what you're saying with this. But actually, like, they had this moment in this episode where basically he talked about essentially doing like a United States of the Earth Republic. I don't know how else to describe it. He talks about letting each region of the Earth Kingdom elect a leader, and then sort of work like, I guess, the US, where there's like maybe someone that they're reporting to, or like, but like it's a democracy is what he's talking about. He's talking about elections, and taking some cues from the Republic. And I just thought that was such an amazing setting up true democracy in the Earth Kingdom, and choosing when they're basically about to go, oh, you can just be king, for him to choose to not be king and to instead set up democracy is delightful. And a great conclusion to both. And an earned one as well. It's not like he's been an ass all season and then suddenly at the end he's going, you know what, I'm going to give democracy a try. No, they earned that. They had him slowly become a competent leader that was looking out for the good of his people. And like by doing that, this wasn't a shock. This was like, yeah, I could see him looking at this and going, actually, maybe this is better for the people than me just being king. And that sort of humility is the mark of a good leader, being able to recognize when you're not capable of doing it and thinking there might be a better way or stepping down or anything like that. Is like, yeah, that's refusing power is the mark of a good leader in a weird way. And I think like, yeah, I'm just going to have to eat crow on that too, because I was wrong. I was just very wrong.
I don't know if you were wrong to worry. I think the character development has been done very quickly and mainly over the last few episodes. Because let's be honest, him saying the sentence, it's not that I'm lazy and don't want to do the job, but like, 3 episodes ago, that would have been played as it's not that I'm lazy and don't, you know what I mean? It would have been played as, well, this is the truth. And in this episode, it's played very genuine, but that's not necessarily. I love it. It's kind of like the representation thing. I really like it because it feels like it's the right conclusion for the show. I love it because it's bringing the Earth Kingdom in line with the rest of the world. So I think it's right, but it's missing some beats to get him from A to B. Him keeping calm in a crisis is actually an indication of, well, maybe this guy should lead because he kept calm in a crisis. It's not necessarily an indication of, oh no, well, we'll just demolish the monarchy. So I think you're being too hard on yourself to say it was a lack of faith or anything like that. I think there are some missing beats. It's just you don't particularly notice it because it's absolutely the right conclusion for the world. I do think they could have done more to make it the right conclusion, or make it feel more like the right conclusion for the character.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, because for me, it's the decision to go to a democracy is not because it's to do with... So the reason he was able to be calm and cool in the face of things, because he needed to be to help the people. I kind of the arc I've seen him on is not one of like learning to be calm under pressure, but actually him learning to actually put his people first, right? And him running out to get the badger moles last week and save the people was very much him putting the people first, right? He didn't need to do that. He could have just whinged and moaned and cried like he would have done in the first few episodes and been like, "Where's my crown?" That could have been. But I felt a little bit like what they did was pretty clever, because what they made it was more about him putting the people first, and then when he actually thinks about being king, he's like, well, actually, what would really help the people would be that if these individual towns could govern themselves to a certain degree with elections and selecting proper leadership, and then we could support that on a more on a countrywide level, so to speak. I don't know. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do think it could have been cleaner. Again, like with Korra's arc, no arc in this series has been perfect. They're all been a bit muddled in places and not as clean as they could have been. Again, maybe they were a bit ambitious. Maybe this is just a victim of ambition here. Where they like had bigger ideas and they were able to execute in the time they had. But yeah, I still feel like though they did a really good job with it, and I was very skeptical they were going to be able to get it. I was, no matter, even if we disagree on whether they got from A to Z correctly, the fact they got to Z at all is insane. I was very wrong to not trust that was going to happen, I feel. But yeah, let's see. Any other quick notes before we move on to the last few bits? Oh god, we've still got trivia and comments. Damn, we've gone on for longer than I was anticipating here. My bad. The music. The music in this episode is extraordinary. We don't credit the music a lot, but particularly Mako's big blow up the machine electricity moment, just spectacular, both visually and musically. But like, if anyone wants to just hear some incredible music, just find that scene and just listen to it. Just close your eyes and hear the music. It's absolutely astonishing. I did love that scene ended with Bolin coming back to save Mako as well, by the way. But Mako and Bolin decided there's only one way to take the big robot out, Chris, and it's the power of brotherhood. Well, it's electricity, but also brotherhood. We didn't really talk about Korra and Kuvira's fight inside the thing because it's pretty short, but it's also pretty badass. I did enjoy all the action at the front end of this episode, which we haven't discussed too much, is all really good. Pretty creative stuff. Them bouncing around and using the items around them to fight.
Yeah, and Korra's raw determination. Well, it's not going to happen again. It was great. Really enjoyable.
Yeah, and Kuvira just removing the arm once the arm was broken, was just pretty badass. I know they did it mostly to set up that finale, the arm being in the forest, but I still loved that. I just loved her ripping that off and just chucking it away. Super cool. Have we covered everything? I think we might have done, Chris. I don't see anything else in my notes.
Well, hot damn.
I think we're fine. Let me skip one more second, just in case. Now we're good. Let's move it on, Chris. Should we do the triv?
Let's triv it up.
I'm gonna give you some trivia. So, during Mako's sacrificial destruction of the Colossus, the way the sound becomes muted as the score dominates, actually we were just talking about the music from that scene, is apparently a callback to the sound mixing for Zuko and Azula's fight in Sozin's Comic Part 3. I think that's a nice touch. I like that. I like that technique.
That is a nice touch.
Make the music overpower the sound effects for dramatic effect. I like it. This is a good one.
That's nice.
Little detail. The waiters at Varric and Julie's wedding are dressed like Nuktuk. Just for fun, I guess. The necklace that Korra wears during Varric and Julie's wedding is similar to the one Aang wears at Zuko's coronation in Sozin's Comic Part 4. Sort of circular in shape and these 3 tassels hanging off it. Some of the decorations at Varric and Julie's wedding are based off winter-themed decor Brian Konietzko used at his own wedding. That's fun. There's some music ones here. This is interesting. So the theme that plays during the episode's final moments is named The Legend of Korra, and it expands and embellishes the theme that plays during the series' usual end credits. It's something that series composer Jeremy Zuckerman had wanted to do from the moment he initially composed them. The kalimba that plays in the score harkens back to the variations of the Safe Return theme from Avatar The Last Airbender that would usually play at the end of every episode. I credit to Jeremy Zuckerman. I think his music is pretty flawless in this show. I don't think there's a bad piece of music in this show. It's also really good. So, yeah, thumbs up. Although it's not explicitly mentioned during the series itself, the final shot of Korra and Asami holding hands while entering the spirit portal was meant to depict their evolution of a friendship into a more romantic relationship. They confirmed this in the commentary, and there's a few hints to this that are a bit more sort of just iconography based. The way in which Korra and Asami turn towards each other with their hands clasped together parallels Varric and Julie's nuptial pose from the wedding scene shown earlier in the episode. And the score that plays during that scene, to go back to the music, contains elements of the Avatar's Love, a song that played several times during the first series during romantic scenes between Aang and Katara.
Nice.
So yeah, it definitely is intended to be love and not just they're good friends. I don't think anyone's really debating that at this stage, but just in case anyone wants to go, but they only really held hands. Friends can do that. Then I think you're shit out of luck if that's your feelings, because I'm pretty sure it's clear. But anyway, this is the last bit of trivia, and I think this is nice. The last word spoken in the episode, and thus the series, is perfect. This was also the very last word spoken in Avatar The Last Airbender.
Oh, nice. That is nice.
Yeah. And I could make a shit joke here about, well, only one of those shows was perfect. Neither show was perfect, it should be said. I'm joking. Yeah. But anyway. So yeah, there you go. Shall we hit up some feedback, Chris? Get some feedback?
Yeah. Oh, it's the final, it's the final one for the time being. Although there'd have to be a grand one for the next episode that is literally all feedback.
Oh my god, that's going to be fun.
But I hadn't even thought about this. Okay, Yeah. Whoa. No, I regret that. Let me start again. feedback from last time that we didn't get to speak about at the time because the podcast isn't live.
So thank you for everyone for joining us here on feedback from last time. This is from feedback we got from the last series that we're getting to now because we record these series so in advance that sadly we can't respond to the feedback live. Very quickly though, just because people, I don't want anyone to think I forgot. I did find the review in question. The review says, "Too much Steven Universe, not enough Avatar." It's a 2-star review. And the review goes on to say, "The Avatar-related commentary is really good." Oh, thank you. I think we'll leave it there. Oh, no, there's more. But there is far too little of it. It's a shame they spend, seriously, half the time going on unrelated tangents. And one of the hosts doesn't know the characters' names. After a whole season... I could not listen to Zuko being consistently called Zuku anymore.
Do you think he's talking about... Do you think they're talking about me or you?
Both, I feel like. I feel like I'm responsible for the tangents and you're responsible for Zuku.
I get now, because I was thinking of Korra. We probably did talk about Steven Universe a lot in the early days. Mm-hmm. But, of analysing Avatar, but that's brilliant. Look, I apologise. It's an ongoing, non-stop apology from me in terms of my pronunciation of names. So, yeah.
And I feel like you just pronounced pronunciation incorrectly, also, which I enjoyed.
I did, not deliberately, but I would have laughed. The only thing that would have made that comment better is if he'd said, I couldn't take another moment of Zuko being called Zuki Poos.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out, which I thought was interesting, there's another review here, and it's like it's titled "Good Idea," and it says it's 1 star. The other one, by the way, I will say actually, the Too Much Steven Universe Not Enough Avatar review gave us 2 stars. That's how we, because the Avatar related commentary is really good, is how they start that review. So, we'll take that. Credit, tick, thank you. Appreciate that.
Big tick, thank you very much.
Yeah, we also appreciate the negative stuff. That's fine also. Fair comments. We do get distracted very easily.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, to be fair, none of that stuff is
untrue. Yeah, no, all completely true. And it's one of those things where, like, that's just the podcast this has become. That's just the podcasts Chris and I put out. They're
exactly.
Tangenty, they're very conversational. They're not always going to stay focused because conversations don't naturally always stay completely focused, and we could chop that stuff out, but it wouldn't feel very authentic to what Chris and I do. And we get a huge amount of feedback from people who very much enjoy that we do tangents. So we're obviously just making a podcast that leans that way. It's like this person is like commenting on a rap song that doesn't have enough electric guitar in it. Like I'm sorry that the rap song doesn't have enough electric guitar in it, and you like rock music. Maybe go listen to some rock music. We're obviously just not for you. I appreciate that you've given us a go. But clearly we're just, if you want a really super focused podcast on Avatar, this isn't the one. That's for sure. That's just the way it is. But there's one other one here that's 1 star, and I think this one's even more interesting. Good idea. Wish it wasn't explicit so I could show it to more people. Great idea, though. I like how you're still going. Please make cleaner episodes, though. Just my opinion. This is a kids' show.
Also fair.
We're gonna swear by accident. I do not have the time to sift through every episode and bleep out swearing. Therefore, it's listed as explicit on iTunes. It just has to be. I do not have the time to go through hours and hours of footage and cut out every. Or the worst case scenario, I miss one, and it's not listed as explicit, and children do listen to it and they hear them.
Yeah, I think it's never. The reality is, again, it's that conversational thing. Neither of us consciously swear for effect or deliberately swear. Yeah. It's just unfortunately that's we swear as individuals and it comes through, especially when passionate about something. So yeah, like Dan says, it would take way too much time, and also to some degree, if he shifted it out, almost not feel natural and not feel conversational because it's being interrupted by beats. So that's why Dan doesn't take them out. He's not being a lazy cunt, obviously. Please bleep that one, please. I ask of you.
Why would I bleep out my favourite swear we've ever done? That's the best one. That's the best one. That's the best swear we've ever done, Chris. The timing of that was amazing. Oh God! Right.
Thank you.
That's made my day.
You. But yeah, it's not Dan being that. He's not being lazy.
Yeah. No.
Do we have any other? While we're here, do we have any other 1-star reviews?
Good question. Not that I can.
I hope it's very clear. I hope my audio is very clear there that I was calling you that word.
Yeah, right. Not on Analysing Avatar, but I at some point, maybe on Nothing But Static, we'll check out some of our 1-star reviews on iTunes. I bet there's some good ones. There's another one. Great. There is another low one on this that says that we nitpick too much, too many negatives. Look, I think. Just in very quickly in response to that, it's a review show. If we spend the whole time gushing and we don't talk about any negatives, then we'd have the opposite complaint that we never criticize the show. So we try to be balanced. When we're not liking it, we're not liking it. These are just our honest reactions, and they're going to be what they're going to be. And if you feel like we're nitpicking and pointing out things that are inconsequential, then the reality is probably the stuff that was good in the episode just isn't as interesting to discuss. That sometimes happens, where the good of the episode is like, yeah, that's good. That's obviously good. Let's have an actual discussion about that. Well, what do you say about it other than it works? You're more likely to get like a discussion point out of a thing that's not working than a thing that is. That's just the reality of what we do. But we try to be as balanced as we can. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah. So here's some comments from our actual listeners. This is actual feedback from last series now. So this one comes from Historic Helper, and I think I held on to this one specifically. Actually, both of these I held on to specifically for this episode. So I'm just going to read both of our comments because I think they hit on similar ideas. So the first one's from Historic Helper. It says, I think something important that might be a factor in the context of Korra was one of the first... I should clarify. This is a comment on an episode last year when we talked about why the show was pulled from its screenings and put specifically online. I should clarify the context for this. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. I think something might be important is the fact that in context, Korra was one of the first kids show to really blow up with a slightly older Tumblr crowd, and I don't think anyone involved quite knew what to do with that. It came a little before Steven Universe, and I remember the mood being on Tumblr that it was very much the last of an older generation. Unlike some of the big shows like Adventure Time or Steven Universe, Korra doesn't appeal that much to kids. It's pretty decidedly a teen show, and I don't think Nick knew what to do with that. This was an era before shows like She-Ra or movies like Nimona could be heavily supported by a much more adult crowd. In my experience, kids' media wasn't quite given the consideration or attention it is now, and there wasn't as much fandom-specific news. I agree with this. I think Korra, like, in the exact show it is, but just shuffled 4 or 5 years later, finds an audience. It was in a really awkward position where adults weren't watching as much animation. I feel like that's shifting, and Korra might have succeeded better had it been removed from the time it was released and shuffled a few years along. So I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's a fair comment for sure.
Yeah, and I think looking at it now go on.
I think it is also, and I don't know if it's just the media I engage with, but I think it is remembered fondly. Do you know what I mean? I think,
yes.
Korra and Asami in particular, I expect is remembered fondly, yes. And I think in general, like, I have absolutely on podcasts and, YouTube channels I engage with heard a lot of praise for this show, undoubtedly.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I guess this is more a comment at the success of the show, though, and the Nickelodeon not being sure why it wasn't getting the ratings they were hoping for, and why they tried experimenting with making it just digital only. Because I think what this person is speaking to specifically is that, like, weird situation where the show wasn't really successful enough to warrant getting the budget it needed or the time it needed, or we talked about the fact that they had their budget slashed for this season, so they had to cut an episode and turn it into the Remembrances episode, the flashback episode. had the show been more successful, that doesn't happen. The reason the show's not successful, Nick didn't know how to promote it. They didn't know where to put it. They didn't know when to air it. And I think that's what this comment is really getting at. And I 100% agree.
Yeah, that's fair.
In hindsight, now it's found an audience and there are people who love it, and it's, and some of the crowd that grew up with Avatar then got older and then appreciated Korra, and it's just, it's found its place in the world, so to speak. But it's imperfect, as we've discussed, and it does have its detractors, and at the time it certainly wasn't exactly a success, and Nickelodeon scrambled to figure out how to make this show a hit for them the way Avatar had been. But, Brian Konietzko and Michael DiMartino both were doing something very bold with this show, and it was very challenging, deliberately, to what Avatar was, and I think that caught Nickelodeon out. I think because they knew how to market Last Airbender. They didn't know how to market this. They didn't know how to make this successful. And it's not even really a discussion about the quality of the show. That's just Nickelodeon had a show that didn't fit with anything else they had on the air at the time, and they did not know what to do with it. So, yeah, to Nickelodeon's credit, they gave it 4 seasons. Considering that they didn't know what to do with it, that's pretty impressive that it got as far as it did. So yeah, the last comment, and this one I did say very distinctly for this last episode, I think one of the reasons Nickelodeon panicked, again in reference to them pulling it, is the very thing that happens in the final moments of the show. Now, I wanted to pull this up. This is from Cable Dario. Dairo? Cable Dairo. Sorry, Cable Dairo, I mispronounced your name to start with. I find this a very interesting comment. We know that seasons 2 and 3 were kind of produced simultaneously to a degree. They were sort of all of the episodes for these 2 seasons were commissioned at once, so production just ran from the start of season 3 to the end of season 4 without a break, as far as I'm aware. They just kind of wrote all the scripts, started animating, and just kept rolling until they were done. The idea that Nickelodeon panicked because of the ending, and that's why they pulled it from TV in season 3, it's possible that the ending was only just being developed while season 3 was airing. And that's, that's part of that. They were getting ahead of it by choosing to pull it off TV before the advertisers got wind of it. I wouldn't rule that out, but I don't 100% think that's... Even if that was a factor, I still think the reasons we talked about in the episode where we discussed it make more sense to me, which is just... financially speaking, it just was cheaper to do a rerun of something like, of Adventure Time in that time slot than it was to put Korra on. It had an audience, but it was a very specific audience that were already finding it online anyway. So it's like, why don't we just make that our primary target audience? I don't agree with that choice. It still should have had a TV slot. And eventually it did kind of get back on TV. New episodes were airing. But they were going out digitally first, generally speaking, is my understanding. So yeah, it's possible that was a factor, that they were looking ahead, seeing where it was going, and feeling a bit anxious about that. But I can't. I don't know if I 100% would agree that it was the main reason that Nickelodeon panicked with airing this show. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Yeah, I feel like it was too. It was too far away. I don't think that would have been... I don't think the timing's quite aligned for that, like you've just said. I agree with that.
Yeah, I could probably look. When did they air? What's the difference in airing? So it was mid-season 3 that we switched to online. I can see that here. That happened in November of 2013. Yeah, the final episode didn't air until like November of 2014? Wait, have I got this right? Oh, no, that's season 2. Oh, wait a second. Hang on. I didn't realize season 3 and 4 aired so close to each other. Oh, they just dumped it. They did. I remember we talked about this. When season 3 finished in August of 2014, season 4 started about 2 weeks later. October the 3rd.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe then.
So
okay, fair enough.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I've forgotten about this. Yeah, so they had season 4 in the can. They were finishing up season 3 and they just kept airing it. They're like, let's just get this out. That's crazy.
Oh well, in that case, correct. Stan corrected. The commenter is
potentially
that
right.
is,
yeah,
there is more potential for that than we gave them credit for. Right.
Yeah,
away.
right. Because of course that makes perfect sense to me actually. Because obviously, yeah, they did panic and just dump everything they had. It makes perfect sense. They didn't even bother to put a break. And I remember us talking about that now when we were doing season 3. So yeah, but look, great comments. Thank you to both our commenters this week for replying to our videos. If you'd like to do the same, of course, youtube.com/nothingbutstaticuk, where you can reply to any episode of this season of Analysing Avatar. We post them as podcasts on YouTube. You can find the episode, leave a comment. I'm going to gather as many of them as I can, and we're going to go through them in a special episode we're going to release in, I don't know, we'll say about 10 weeks' time from now. Not exactly, not an exact science that. When the next series of Rewind reviews finishes, basically, we'll do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, please leave comments. I'm already seeing this is the inevitable thing that happens. We're usually about 10 weeks ahead. So as we get to the final episode, episodes 1 and 2 are usually going up. So I've already seen a couple of interesting comments coming through from season 4 as it started. We'll cover those when we get to them. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. If you'd like to lend your voice to it, that is how you do it. Other ways, of course, to get in touch with us is mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. Or if you'd like to support us, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic allows you to give us money, cold hard cash, and from there that supports what we do, of course, and it gives you access to episodes of this podcast and our other podcast Rewind reviews a week ahead of their normal release, plus access to the 9-ish episodes I think that we did of Nothing But Lyrics, and our special bonus Nothing But Claps episode, which is I still love that exists. So yeah, those are available to people who subscribe to that. Also, access to our Discord comes through that. Of course, if you'd like to support us without, spending, that's very reasonable. You can do so by heading to one of those delightful sites that you interact with us on: iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, whatever, and interacting with the podcast in some way. Liking, subscribing, reviewing. You want to give us a nice 1-star review telling us to talk too much about Steven Universe? Do it. Although, don't leave fake angry ones. We'll know. We'll smell it. I'll smell it. I'll smell it in the air. You won't get read out on the air. If I sense that you're doing it for funsies, I'm just not going to read it. We'll know.
Yeah. So don't have fun, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Please do whatever you want. I've always said in the past, I will take the reviews, good and bad. I really don't mind. Just whatever you think, just throw it down there. So yeah, you can interact with any of our podcasts on any of those platforms. That helps us out because it tells the delightful algorithm that is our god and our master, and decides who does and does not succeed. It tells it you enjoyed the podcast and makes it more likely to recommend it to others. Of course, final episode of the main bulk of the Analysing Avatar stuff. Big shout out to our delightful friend Raphodraws, who of course supplied that incredible artwork of Appa at sunset that we always use on the podcast feed and on the YouTube channel to represent this podcast. Rapho gave us permission to use that art long time ago, and I genuinely believe that a pretty high percentage of our listeners click on our podcast when they're first just looking for an Avatar podcast because that artwork is so good. I really believe that. It catches the eye. If you just put Avatar podcast or Avatar discussion or any of that into iTunes, Spotify, and just skim down, there are a lot of really good podcasts with not great artwork, and it can really... I think it can make a really big difference when someone's just flicking through what you pay attention to, what you then read the description of, and then go in to check out. And I really do think that we owe some of our listenership, or a pretty hefty portion of our listenership, to just having really eye-catching, beautiful artwork. So Raphodraws, go support Raphodraws, Instagram.com/Raphodraws, or launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws. They have a Tumblr and a Twitter and a YouTube and all that stuff. And you can buy on Redbubble various things with their artwork on it. They don't just do Steven Universe. God, no, it's in my head tonight. Avatar-based artwork. They do all sorts of other stuff. Maybe even Steven Universe. But yeah, that's everything. How are we feeling, Chris? We did it.
Yeah, man. I feel good. I feel Yeah, like I said earlier, you know, it's a patchy show, but it's been an absolute pleasure to talk about. I'm really glad we did it. I'm really glad we watched it. And like you said, I think what is key to take away from that patchiness is you didn't particularly notice it because you wouldn't unless you had to, you know, eke out an hour and 15-minute review every week and really nitpick and analyze.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, if you're just watching the show, it's a really good time and really enjoyable. And you know, I'm going to say it. I think it's a series that justifies its existence as a sequel to Avatar.
Yeah, and if there was ever any effort to sort of like decanonize this, I'd be very upset. There wouldn't be, but like, I would be.
I don't think there would be.
No. But if they ever tried to like Terminator a Dark Fate it, where we're just pretending everything after Terminator 2 didn't happen, like I was okay with that in the world of Terminator because most things that came after Terminator 2 sucked, but absolutely not on the other points. Yeah, on this product because I enjoyed Korra more than enough to justify that it exists. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. I'm not trying to think now. When are we next? We don't know. We don't know when we're next to see you guys, but keep an eye on the feed. I'd say follow me on Twitter, but I've literally deleted my Twitter now. Like, it's gone. Like, I deleted it. So, I don't know where you'd get updates. Just keep an eye on the feed, I guess. And we'll see at some point that we've come back for more. But in the meantime...
Yeah, keep an eye on the feed. We'll be back.
Yeah. In the meantime... Actually, check the feed when Avatar stuff happens. That's what I'll say. Because that's when we'll be putting stuff up. Or subscribe to the YouTube channel because it will also get posted there. So you'll get updates if you've got the bell notification-y thing on YouTube. That's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, with that said, thanks everyone for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
That's been everything for now on Analysing Avatar.